Greatness shows up after you're tired. Let's say it one more time, man. Greatness shows up after you're tired, not when you're tired. And breakthroughs don't happen until you reach your breaking point. Been there many times, man, at that place I didn't want to go on, and I realized that strength can't develop until your strength is gone. You got to keep pushing, because character and courage is developed or lost when you decide to keep going or to give up. You see, that's the point. You got to stop, and you got to realize that's your breakthrough coming right there, because when others that are around you won't, you will be the one that goes ahead. Somebody has to step up and go a little bit farther. Is that somebody you? How many says that's me? I want to go a little farther.
Welcome to our show, Furthermore. We're going to find education, motivation, and even inspiration. I'm Dr. Mark.
And I'm Dr. Michelle, and we are here to push you and encourage you to go a little further in all aspects of your life, to do and become more than you ever thought possible.
So education is the key, information is king, but wisdom, what you're going to get here, is always supreme. So prepare yourself for the latest news and hottest headlines.
Truth bombs, amazing guests, relevant and impactful information, and life-changing plans. You are being prepared for the best days of your lives.
So you know what to do. Buckle those seatbelts and put those tray tables in the upright position and prepare yourself for the greatest journey of your life.
Right here, right now.
On Furthermore. Welcome to our show. Welcome, my queen.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome, everyone.
So we are all going to be here together to push each other, to encourage each other, to fill each other with some inspiration and power to do more. Don't we all need a little bit of hope, health, and freedom? Isn't that good? You see there in the graphic, my wife and I walking, we lift weights, we walk together, we do this together. This is not just put on for the film. We actually do this stuff, don't we?
We do. 365 days of the year, we have an accountability plan to one another and to ourselves.
The only day you don't exercise is the day you're dead, I guess, right? So move every day, man, and don't make cornball excuses on why you can't. That is absolutely ridiculous,
Make
folks.
excuses on why you can't.
Yeah, exactly. Find reasons you can instead of focus on why you can't. You can become a can't-aholic. Hope you caught that, right? It is coming up in the wintertime. Many people are falling for the SAD, the seasonal affective disorder, because we are living in shorter days, darker, longer nights. We need to get more vitamin D, don't we?
We absolutely do. Vitamin D does a body good, especially with that thing called seasonal affective disorder. When the sun goes behind the clouds, we start to lower that internal level of vitamin D. And vitamin D has got some really amazing conversions that it actually has to go through in the body before it actually becomes a usable thing in affecting mood.
Well, we see there that at the top, that UVB is supposed to come from sun, and we're supposed to get this pre-vitamin D, which is kind of a precursor, if you will, for D. We can also get D from the diet, of course, as you see there on the left, but D3 in that first form after pre-vitamin D is not in its most bioavailable form. It still has to go through 25D and then 1,25 hydroxy-D is what that's called. And you can see that it's going to be important for bone, immune cells, liver, and guess what? Even the brain. We need to take vitamin D, don't we?
Absolutely. Who doesn't want more brain health? That vitamin D plays an effect on the mood. Seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, can be improved by vitamin D. Bones. Vitamin D aids the mineralization of bones with its buddy K2, of course. But if you want healthy bones, vitamin D is one of your primary go-tos. Also for the immune system, boy, in this time of the year when the sun is going behind the clouds, we see an increase in viral exposure, bacterial exposure, sinus infections, coughs, and bronchitis. Vitamin D improves the immune system, and it decreases that thing called hospitalizations and antibiotic use.
Imagine that. It's also good for brain too. It keeps being depressed. Many people think erroneously so that if they're in the summertime getting a lot of sun, they don't have to take D. False. Statement wrong. Secondly, they'll think if their skin is dark like mine, they don't have to take vitamin D. False. Wrong. Bad thing. The bottom line is we all need to take vitamin D. We recommend 5,000 IUs if you're adult. Get the vitamin D up there, maybe even more, 5,000 IUs. Make sure you take vitamin K with it. Get your levels checked and try to be somewhere between 60 and maybe 90. That is going to be considered optimal. So when we get back after this break, we're going to continue part 2 of our American hero, constitutional attorney Kris N. Hall, which continue our discussion from last week on Article 6, Clause 2, which is the most incorrectly interpreted part of the United States Constitution.
Uh-oh.
You don't want to miss that after the break. What do you think about?
Oh boy. Beast mode. Rah!
I'm thinking that big tiger that just absolutely is so powerful, is so tough, it absolutely blows your mind. But beast mode, the way we're talking about, is a little bit different, isn't it? Because it's ability to do things that go beyond what everybody else can do.
I would say the first thing that I would want to bring to mind is for everybody is a quote from Samuel Adams. And he wrote, "No people will tamely surrender their liberties nor be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved." He said, on the contrary, when the people become universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink underneath their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders.
So, folks, our constitutional attorney expert, American hero Kris N. Hall, rocked our world last week when she talked about the most misinterpreted, misused, and even abused part of the Constitution. That would be Article 6, Clause 2. If you remember what that is, if you don't, go back and listen to it. But it is a clause that's talked about and called the Supremacy Clause. Oh my goodness, how it's been misinterpreted. So again, refer back to last week's talk on that. But we're going to continue part 2 this week on the Supremacy Clause with Kris N. Hall.
You need to know about the proper role of the federal government and the check and balance of the states on the federal government. A simple reading. Most people in America have never read Article 6, Clause 2. They've read a lot about Article 6, Clause 2. They've read what people have written about Article 6, Clause 2, but they've not actually read it themselves. Article 6, Clause 2, and I'm only going to recite for you a portion of it. So I want you to take the challenge to go read it yourself. It reads, "This Constitution, comma, and the laws of the United States made in pursuance thereof, semicolon, shall be the supreme law of the land." Now, that complex compound clause is actually 2 sentences. This Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land, which establishes that the Constitution, as I said, is the supreme law of the land. It is the standard for federal government. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing else. The next clause, "And the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land," establishes, reinforces that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land and only acts by the federal government that are made consistent with the Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land. So acts by the federal government, laws, regulations, federal acts, executive orders that are not made consistent under specific delegated authority by the Constitution are not the supreme law of the land. So unless these acts, laws, legislations, executive orders, regulations are specifically found within the Constitution authorized, they are not the supreme law of the land. The check and balance comes in the next section, which states, the Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land. This is what we're starting off with. The laws made in pursuance, the federal acts made in pursuance to the Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land. And it says, and the judges of every state shall be bound thereby. So the states are bound by the Constitution. The states are bound by federal acts, laws, executive orders, and regulations that are authorized by the Constitution. But if it's not authorized by the Constitution, right? Laws made not in pursuance to the Constitution shall not be the supreme law of the land, and the states shall not be bound thereby. We have Alexander Hamilton, we have James Wilson, we have Federalists and anti-Federalists alike that all expound on that principle in the same way. Alexander Hamilton said that acts contrary to the Constitution cannot be valid. James Wilson said, anything therefore coming from Congress that is inconsistent with the Constitution shall not have the force of law. So the most important aspect of state sovereignty is understanding Article 6, Clause 2 establishes that anything that the federal government does that is inconsistent with the explicit writing of the Constitution. It is contrary to the Constitution. It is outside the writing of the Constitution, does not have the force of law, and the states are not bound by them. The check and balance that exists and is absolutely vitally essential to the proper operation of our government is and must be that the states hold the duty and the right to refuse to comply and to refuse authority in their state where the federal government is exercising unauthorized power.
Just that is brilliant, and that, as you know, I travel around the state with the Constitution in one hand. Folks, I echo that challenge. Each of you right now, please go read Article 6, Clause 2, the Supremacy Clause, and go back and listen to this section again and get involved in Kris Sand's teaching, because we're at a crisis moment, folks.
Yes.
This is serious. If we don't learn this, we're going to continue to get ran over, because as Kris Sand established clearly right now, whatever Congress does outside of that doesn't agree with that, let's call it, it's unconstitutional. It's
Absolutely
not lawful. Don't comply. Great. Kris Sand, you are brilliant. I am excited to continue this journey. This has been so enlightening for many thousands of people so far, and it's going to be continued in our further teaching and stuff. I'm excited to continue this journey with you. Folks, go right now to Kris Sand Hall as the central hub of all this information. Get that book she referred to. Get it. I'm getting it right now. You get it right now too, and let's read it and let's learn it, because once you know it, you can't unknow it. And one of my favorite saying, folks, is this: you can have all kinds of knowledge you want, but if you don't know how to apply it, that's called foolishness. But the correct use of knowledge is that thing called wisdom, which we're supposed to seek above all things. Kris Sand, thank you, and thank you. That seems like it's not enough, but I look forward to seeing you here in a couple more weeks again, and just, this is brilliant. So thank you for your time today once again.
Well, thank you. I do want to remind people that we have our documentary at noncompliantmovie.com that focuses on this particular aspect of the role and the duty of the people through their states to control the federal government. And that's only 82 minutes. It's a nonprofit video, so you can go watch it at no cost to you.
Boom, noncompliantmovie.com. We got to go there right now. We'll put that certainly in the feed and actually right now on our screen. Go there right now, folks, and get that. Kris, and just thank you for what you're doing for so many people. Service to our country, service to people, but I know you're serving God. This is your ministry too, so we appreciate it.
Wow. One of my our favorite American heroes, Kris Ann Hall, constitutionalist, refused to comply when tyranny becomes law. Rebellion becomes your duty. We cannot stand to be overrun. Stay with us while we take a quick break. You're not going to want to miss this next segment. We'll be right back.
I've experienced tremendous hurts in my younger years. Abandonment, abusive relationships, career ending, injury, and even homelessness. Yes, really. For a long time, I let resentment and unhappiness pile on and keep me from moving forward. So right now, I just want you to know one thing. It's not too late for you.
She said to me, she's kind of one of the JAG people, one of the attorneys for the military. She said, Mark, the military today can't even fit in their uniform, much less fight a war. She said, I'm concerned about the safety of America because of how we're caring for and feeding our troops. It is so sad what we have in our country, and no one wants to talk about this. So last week, we talked about in our third segment about the greatest temptations that face all of us. And there are three, and they're laid out clearly in the book of Matthew, verses 1 through 11. And we start talking about those temptations and those things that are there. They face all of us every day, don't they?
Yes, and Jesus demonstrates how to resist temptation. And he is a true.
Yeah, it's not just enough to say no, thank you. You have to have more than that. It's not about a polite refusal, folks. You have to have some background in order to have a backbone, and that's going to give you some courage. What background am I talking about? I'm talking to understand biblical principles and know what they mean. When I think about what Jesus went through, I am completely amazed and floored and literally in awe, because he went through all the things that we can go through in a lifetime, those greatest temptations, 1, 2, 3, right in a row. Immediately from being hungry for 40 days and being tempted with turning stones into bread, with being put up on the temple and saying, jump off, putting God to the test, with being led up to a high mountain and being given the opportunity to have all the kingdom of the world under his control in exchange for bowing down to Satan. He had all those things there in front of him that he could have bowed down to and acquiesced his responsibility, but he was mission oriented all the way, not allowing his emotions to lead, but allowing his convictions to lead the way. We need to take a lesson, folks, in that. Let your convictions lead, and the emotions will follow. Check this out.
Son of God, tell these stones to become bread.
It is written, man does not live on bread alone, but from every word that comes from the mouth of God.
If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone.
It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test.
All this I give to you, if you will bow down and worship me.
Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only.
Folks, do we understand that those temptations are out there for us today, just like they were for Jesus thousands of years ago? See, that was a model right there of how we're supposed to handle them. It's not a coincidence today that people struggle with the idea of food addiction, right?
Well, and if you caught that time and time again in that video, it said, it is written. Bread spiritually means that the word of God is what nourishes man, and man cannot live on bread alone. We must edify ourselves on scripture. When we hear those words in our head, we get driven by the ways of the world, and we find ourselves taking the wide road instead of the narrow path.
The fascinating thing about this first temptations, the hunger after 40 days and being tempted with turning the stone into bread. Jesus could have done that. It's super easy for him, right? Hard for me, but easy for him, is the idea that he knew the word of God was more satiating and more filling than even a loaf of bread could be. And we need to take that into consideration, realizing that God will give us the food we need when we need it. We don't have to go out and create it. It's going to be given and supplied just like it was for Jesus. That second temptation I find is very important and very impactful, is when Jesus is led up on top of the building. In other words, he was led up on top of a temple and he was told to just jump off, and that God would commission angels to catch him so he wouldn't break a leg or something like that.
Well, and how many times do we find ourselves bowing to these earthly demons or gods, if you will? They're false gods.
Well, and the idea of this one is like false grace. Well, God will take care of me. He'll forgive me. God will fix it. I'll just do it anyway. Well, again, false grace. Call it ungrace. And really, when you live in ungrace, you live in an ungrateful attitude because you don't understand grace. So that's there. The third one, I think, is like amazingly powerful, and it's really meaning something today in our world. There is power that's available to people that deny Christ or don't acknowledge him as supreme king. Jesus was took out there on top of the high mountains and said by Satan, I'm going to give you all this stuff. It's been given to me. If you'll bow down to me, I will give it to you. Well, Jesus didn't slap him upside the head and say, no, you're lying. Understand that Satan knows the word and he is created by the creator. So this big one, this third one is really amazing because it's power, influence, money, and fame.
That's right. Well, and Jesus just tells us that we must not put God to the test. We must not try to make him prove himself, for he is real and it is written.
And we must not ever put anything above the power, fame, and influence that is God. Many times we do. And it's interesting how we think about this in the wrong way. Man. Hey, next week we're going to talk about
on FurtherMore, magnesium, number 12 in the table of elements on that metabolic table. It is known as the great relaxer, and oh boy, so much more. It's responsible for over 300 metabolic reactions, and we're going to give you all of the details next time on Furthermore.
We're going to challenge you, with that said, before we go, to go out there and make America not just great again, but God's again. We'll see you next time.
To make America God's again, heal America's heart and then raise our flag to the stars again. God bless the U.S. Amen. Make America God's again. Heal America's heart and land. Brothers, sisters, and our children, God bless the U.S. Amen. Shake America, wake America, make America God's again.
This is not something that is a Mark idea and a Michelle idea. This is a God idea. This thing right here has a 2-year shelf life. When we think about the problems we have in America with our food supply, what are we going to eat? What are we going to do? Stock up on something that's going to help you. This is organic pea protein, greens and reds, fibers, and multivitamins and minerals. It will stay good for 2 years. How many have wondered what you're going to eat if things go south? Kingdom Fuel right here.